Marcus Hale did not wait for people. People waited for him. So when his assistant slid a business card across his desk at 8:47 in the morning and told him the designer had arrived, he let 13 minutes pass before he pressed the intercom and said she could come in. He did not look up when the door opened. His eyes stayed on the quarterly report in front of him, a habit he had developed over years of meetings. Let them stand. Let them feel the room. It told him everything about a person before they opened their mouth. Most people shifted their weight after 30 seconds. Some cleared their throats. His last architect had actually said Mr. Hale in a thin, uncertain voice after 45 seconds, and Marcus had known before the man sat down that he would fold on every revision. The woman who walked into his office did none of those things. She stood near the chair across from his desk, and the room stayed quiet. No shuffling, no throat clearing, just the faint sound of a portfolio case being set down against the chair leg with the kind of care that suggested whatever was inside mattered to her. Marcus looked up. She was younger than he expected. Late 20s, maybe 30. Her clothes were clean and well-fitted but not expensive. The kind of woman who dressed with intention rather than budget. She had a portfolio under one arm and a small notebook in her hand, and she was looking at him the way people rarely did. Directly. "Ava Chen," she said. Not as an introduction. More like a confirmation, as if she already knew he had kept her waiting on purpose and had decided it was not worth addressing. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "I expected someone from the senior team," he said. "I am the senior team," she said. "My firm has 4 people. I lead the projects. If that's a problem, I can save us both the morning." He studied her for a moment. Then he gestured to the chair. She sat down, opened her portfolio on the edge of his desk without asking permission, and turned it to face him. The first page was not a mood board or a color palette. It was a photograph of a completed space. A living room. Large windows, natural stone, layered textures that made the room feel like it had been lived in for decades rather than designed in a week. "That's the Mercer project," she said. "Finished 8 months ago. The client had a budget of $200,000 and a very specific idea of what he wanted, which was something that looked expensive." She paused. "I talked him out of it." Marcus looked at the photograph again. Whatever was in that room, it did not look like it was trying to impress anyone. That was exactly what made it impressive. She turned the page without giving him too long to sit with it. The next 3 projects followed the same pattern. Each one specific. Each one considered. Nothing that could have been pulled from a catalog or replicated in another building across the city. "The penthouse is 4,200 square feet," Marcus said. 3 floors. "I need it done in 10 weeks. "I saw the floor plan your assistant sent over," Ava said. 10 weeks is possible if decisions are made on time. Meaning if you change your mind every other week, it won't be 10 weeks. The corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. "My budget is $800,000, he said. Ava nodded and wrote something in her notebook. "I'll need 600 of that allocated to materials and labor," she said. "The remaining 200 covers my firm's fee." Marcus looked at her. "I was thinking more along the lines of 120 for the fee," he said. The room did not change. Ava's expression did not change. She simply stopped writing and looked up at him with the same directness she had walked in with. "Then I'm not your designer," she said. "That's a significant fee for a 4-person firm." "It's the correct fee for the work," she said. "You're not paying for the size of my office. You're paying for what ends up in yours." Marcus had negotiated with contractors, lawyers, and suppliers for 15 years. He knew the difference between someone holding a number because they were nervous and someone holding a number because they meant it. Ava Chen was not nervous. Her pen was resting against her notebook, and she was waiting for him the way he usually made other people wait for him. He did not like it. He also did not pick up his phone and end the meeting, which was what he normally did when a conversation stopped being useful to him. "Send me a detailed breakdown of the fee," he said. "I'll have it to your assistant by end of day," she said. She closed the portfolio and stood up. "I haven't said yes. Marcus said. I know, she said. But you haven't said no either. She picked up her portfolio case, gave him a brief nod that managed to be professional without being deferential, and walked to the door. Marcus watched her go. There was something about the way she moved through his office. Not rushed, not performing confidence the way people did when they were trying to convince themselves they belonged in a room. She simply moved like someone who had already decided her own value and saw no reason to defend it to anyone, including him. The door closed. He sat with the quiet for a moment, then pulled the quarterly report back in front of him. His assistant appeared in the doorway 2 minutes later. Should I send her the standard decline? Marcus looked at the spot where Ava's portfolio had rested on the edge of his desk. The photograph of that living room was still in his head, the way it had looked like something real rather than something purchased. No, he said. His assistant blinked. So we're moving forward. Marcus picked up his pen. Get me her breakdown when it comes in, he said. His assistant left. Marcus stared at the quarterly report but did not read it. He was thinking about the last time he had stood inside his penthouse. How large it was. How little of it felt like anything at all. He told himself he was hiring her because her work was strong and her timeline was solid. He did not think about the way she had looked at him like his name meant nothing in particular. Not yet. The first interference came on a Tuesday. Ava had been on site for 4 days. She had spent the first 2 doing nothing but walking the space, measuring, standing in different corners at different times of day to watch how the light moved. Her team thought she was stalling. She was not. She was listening to the building. By the 3rd day she had a direction. By the 4th she had pulled materials. That was when Marcus walked in. He came unannounced, which she had already decided would be his pattern. He moved through the space with his hands in his pockets, looking at the material samples she had laid out along the floor of the main living area. Concrete, raw linen, a dark, warm-toned wood that had taken her 2 weeks to source before the project even started. These floors, he said. Reclaimed oak, Ava said without looking up from her plans. 14 millimeters. It'll take the light differently at different hours. I was thinking white marble. She looked up then. White marble in a penthouse that sits 40 stories above the city, she said. It'll look like a hotel lobby. Hotels cost money to build. So does replacing a floor you hate in 3 years. Marcus picked up one of the wood samples and turned it over in his hand. People expect a certain standard at this level. People expect what they've already seen, Ava said. That's not a standard. That's a habit. He set the sample down, said nothing, left 20 minutes later. She kept the oak. The second interference came 3 days after that. He sent his assistant with a printed image of a chandelier, crystal, white, the kind that announced itself before anything else in the room had a chance to speak. Ava looked at the image for a long moment. She sent back a photograph of the ceiling she was planning. Clean lines. Recessed lighting placed in a way that would pull the eye toward the view outside rather than upward. A single pendant above the reading corner. Intentional. Quiet. The assistant came back an hour later. Mr. Hale says the chandelier makes more of a statement. Tell Mr. Hale the view is the statement, Ava said. The chandelier competes with it. The assistant left. The chandelier never arrived. But Marcus did. He came back on a Friday afternoon while her team was working, and this time he stayed longer. He walked from room to room with a different energy than the first visit. Less observing. More restless. He stood at the window in the main bedroom. The city spread out below in every direction, sharp and far and enormous. The wall behind the bed, he said. I want it paneled. Dark wood. Floor to ceiling. Ava walked to where he was standing and looked at the wall in question. That wall gets the morning light, she said. Dark paneling kills it. It adds weight to the room. The room doesn't need weight, she said. It needs somewhere to rest. He turned to look at her. She was already walking back to her plans. By the end of the 2nd week, she understood the shape of him. He did not want a bad design. He wanted to feel like he had controlled the design. Those were two completely different things, and only one of them she could give him. The competing designer arrived on a Wednesday morning. Ava was on site when the man walked in with 2 assistants and a presentation board. He was tall, well-dressed, the kind of person who introduced himself by listing his clients before his name. He sat up in the center of the living area like the space already belonged to him. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later. He did not look at Ava when he walked in. He went straight to the presentation board and gave the man his full attention. Ava stood to the side and watched. The proposal was exactly what she expected. White marble floors, the crystal chandelier, gold fixtures throughout, a color palette that had appeared in at least 40 other high-rise penthouses in the city. It was expensive looking in the way a display window was expensive looking, designed to impress from a distance and mean nothing up close. The competing designer spoke with the confidence of someone who had learned to sell before he learned to build. He used words like iconic and elevated and timeless without explaining what any of them meant in that specific room for that specific light. Ava said nothing. When the presentation ended, Marcus looked across the room at her. It was the first time he had looked at her since he arrived. "Thoughts?" he said. "It's a strong presentation," she said. "That's not a thought. That's a compliment." "It's an observation," she said. "The proposal is well packaged. What it doesn't do is respond to this particular building. Any of those finishes could go in any penthouse in any city. You'd never know the difference." The competing designer's jaw tightened slightly. Marcus looked at the board for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I'll go with this direction," he said. The room shifted. One of Ava's team members looked at the floor. The competing designer smiled and began gathering his materials with the careful restraint of a man trying not to look too pleased. Ava looked at Marcus. He was not looking back at her. His eyes were on the presentation board. She recognized what had just happened. He had not chosen the proposal because it was better. He had chosen it because she had told him it was not, and he was not yet the kind of man who could hear that without pushing back. She picked up her notebook. "I'll have my team clear the site by end of day," she said. She said it without heat, without the satisfaction of a fight. She simply meant it. That night Marcus stood alone in his penthouse. The mock-up was on his tablet. He had looked at it 3 times since he got home. White marble, crystal chandelier, gold running through every fixture like a thread pulled too tight. He set the tablet down on the windowsill. Outside, the city moved in every direction. Lights, distance, the kind of view that asked nothing of you and gave everything. He looked at the mock-up again. The room in the image had no relationship with that view. It faced inward. It was loud in the way empty things were loud. Everything in it said money. Nothing in it said anything else. He stood there for a long time. He did not call his assistant. He did not call the competing designer. He picked up the tablet and looked at the image until he was certain of what he was feeling. Then he put it face down on the sill. Outside, the city stayed exactly as it was, patient, unbothered. The room behind him said nothing at all. Marcus did not know why he went back. He told himself it was to check the timeline. The competing designer had sent over a revised schedule that morning, and some of the numbers did not sit right with him. Checking the site made sense. That was what he told himself in the car on the way over, and again in the elevator on the way up. He stopped telling himself anything when the elevator doors opened. The penthouse was mostly dark. One Wouck light stood in the far corner of the main living area, throwing a narrow column of yellow across the floor. The rest of the space sat in the kind of quiet that large empty rooms held at night, deep and thick and slightly pressured. Ava was crouched near the east wall. She had not heard the elevator. She was working with both hands, carefully pulling away a section of wall treatment her team had installed 2 days earlier. The pieces came off in her hands, and she set each one down beside her with the focused patience of someone dismantling a clock. Marcus stayed where he was. He watched her work the way he had watched very few people work in his life. Without performance. Without awareness of being observed. Her movements were precise and unhurried. She would pull a piece free, hold it up toward the white light, examine the adhesion line along the back, then set it down. Every few minutes she made a small note in the notebook beside her knee without breaking the rhythm of what her hands were doing. She was not frustrated. That was the thing that kept him standing there longer than he intended. Most people who redid work that had already been done carried some version of irritation with them. A tightness in the jaw, a sharpness in the movement. Ava had none of that. She worked like the task was simply what needed to happen next. He must have shifted his weight at some point because she looked up. She did not startle. Her eyes found him in the dark near the elevator and she held his gaze for a moment, then looked back at the wall. "The site is closed," she said. "I own the site," he said. "You own the building," she said. "Right now the site is mine." He walked toward the white light anyway. She did not stop him. Up close he could see what she was taking apart. The wall treatment was a textured plaster finish, the kind that had to be applied in sections and left to cure. Her team had done the entire east wall that afternoon. From a distance it looked correct. Clean lines, consistent texture. He crouched down beside her and looked at the section she had already removed. "What's wrong with it?" he said. She held one of the pieces toward the light. "You see where the texture changes direction here?" she said. He looked. It took him a moment. Then he saw it. A shift in the pattern, subtle enough that most people would walk past it every day without registering it consciously. But it was there, a place where the work had lost its consistency and carried on regardless. "Nobody would notice that," he said. "I noticed it," she said. She went back to work. He stayed crouched beside her, which surprised him. He was not a man who crouched beside people and watched them work. He was a man who received reports and approved decisions. But something about the quality of the quiet she carried made the floor feel like a reasonable place to be. "You cleared the site today," he said after a while. "My team finished their hours," she said. "I stayed. To fix something nobody asked you to fix. To fix something that isn't right." He watched her set another piece down. "Why does it matter to you?" he said. She paused. Not long. Just enough to decide whether the question deserved an answer. "My father was a contractor," she said. "Residential work mostly. Small jobs. He had a rule. He said every room you build will outlive the conversation you had about it. The client moves on. The budget moves on. You move on. But the room stays." She picked up the next piece. He said the only thing that's left of you in that space is the quality of what you chose when nobody was watching. Marcus said nothing. "He built a kitchen once," she continued. "Small house. The client had already paid and signed off and left on a trip. My father found a problem in the subflooring on the last day. Nothing structural. Nothing dangerous. The client would never have known." She paused. "He spent 2 extra days fixing it on his own time. Didn't charge anything. Didn't tell the client. Did the client ever find out?" "No," she said. "Then what was the point?" She looked at him then. Not sharply. Not with the patience of someone explaining something obvious to someone slow. Just looked at him. "He knew," she said. The work light hummed between them. Outside, the city spread across the windows in its usual indifferent way, thousands of lit squares stacked against the dark. Marcus stood up slowly and put his hands in his pockets. He looked at the east wall, at the section she had already cleared and the section still to go. An entire afternoon of work her team had done, and she was here alone at 9 in the evening taking it apart because a texture had changed direction in a place nobody would ever look. He thought about the mock-up on his tablet at home. Face down on the windowsill where he had left it. "The other designer's team starts Thursday," he said. Ava nodded. She was already back to work. "I'll be done here before then," she said. He stood there a moment longer than necessary. He was not sure what he was waiting for. She was not going to ask him to change his mind. She was not going to tell him he was making a mistake. She had already said what she had to say in the meeting, and then she had picked up her notebook and moved on. That was simply who she was. He walked back toward the elevator. "Your father," he said, without turning around. "Is he still working?" The pause before her answer was small, but he caught it. He passed 4 years ago, she said. The elevator doors opened. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be, she said. He finished every room he ever started. Marcus stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. He stood in the descending quiet with his hands still in his pockets and her father's rules sitting somewhere in his chest in a place he could not quite name. Every room you build will outlive the conversation you had about it. The only thing left of you is the quality of what you chose when nobody was watching. The elevator reached the ground floor. He did not go home for another hour. The call came on a Monday morning. Not from Marcus directly, from his assistant, which was how Marcus communicated everything that he had not yet decided was worth his personal attention. The assistant asked if Ava was available for a meeting at the Hale Industries office at 2 o'clock that afternoon. Ava looked at her desk. 3 ongoing projects. A supplier invoice that needed disputing. A junior team member waiting on feedback for a residential proposal due Wednesday. I'll be there, she said. She did not spend the morning guessing what the meeting was about. She had learned early in her career that guessing ahead of a conversation was a way of arriving already tired. She finished the invoice dispute, gave her team member the feedback, and left for the office at 1:30. Marcus was already in the room when she arrived. That was different. Every other time she had been in his office, he had made her wait. Today he was standing at the window with a coffee in his hand, and he turned when she walked in with the look of someone who had been thinking about something for a long time and had finally decided to say it. Sit down, he said. She sat today. He came to the desk but did not sit behind it. He stood at the side, which she noticed. It was a small shift, but it changed the shape of the room. Less transactional. I have 14 properties, he said, across 7 cities. Most of them have been designed by firms that charged significantly and delivered predictably. He set his coffee down. I want to change that. Ava waited. I want you to lead the redesign across all 14, he said. Full creative control on each project. Your team expands as needed, costs covered. The contract would run across 3 years with renewal options. He named a figure. Ava kept her face still. The number was not modest. It was the kind of number that would clear her firm's debt, fund 2 years of growth, and remove every financial conversation she had been quietly carrying since she started the business at 26 with her father's tools and a shared studio space above a dry cleaner. She looked at the desk between them. I'd need to see the full contract terms, she said. Of course, he said. Timeline expectations per property. Flexible within reason. Creative approval process. You'd have final say on design decisions. She nodded slowly. The offer had no obvious holes. That was the thing about it. Marcus had clearly thought about what her objections would be and had structured the terms to remove them one by one. It was the kind of preparation he applied to acquisitions. She recognized it because she had watched him operate for 6 weeks. She sat with it for a moment. Then she said, no. The room changed. Not dramatically. Marcus did not raise his voice or reach for his coffee or do any of the things people did when they were caught off guard. But something behind his eyes shifted in the way a structure shifted when one load-bearing assumption was removed. No, he said. No, she said again. I've just offered you creative control across 14 properties with a budget that most firms your size would not see in a decade. I know, she said. Then explain the no. She looked at him directly. If I sign a 3-year contract with Hale Industries, my firm's work belongs to your portfolio, she said. Every project I finish becomes a reference point for your brand, not mine. She paused. Right now, when someone walks into a space I've built, the work speaks for itself. It has my name behind it because I chose every detail and I answered for every decision. If I'm operating under your umbrella for 3 years, that changes. You'd still be making the decisions. I'd be making them inside a structure that belongs to you, she said. That's different. He straightened slightly. Most people would not walk away from this offer, he said. I'm not walking away from the offer, she said. I'm telling you why it doesn't work for me. Those are different things. Marcus moved away from the desk. He went back to the window. His coffee sat untouched and cooling on the desk behind him. Ava watched him stand there. His shoulders were not relaxed. He was processing something, and it was costing him more than he expected, which told her it was not just about the business proposition. "You think working for someone compromises you," he said. His voice had lost its negotiating quality. He was not trying to change her mind anymore. He was trying to understand something. "I think the work only means something when it's mine to stand behind," she said. "Not because of pride. Because that's where the honesty comes from. The reason I pulled apart that wall at 9 o'clock at night was because the work belongs to me. If it belonged to a contract, I would have logged it as acceptable and moved on." Silence. Marcus stayed at the window. Outside, the city moved in its usual way, indifferent to the conversation happening 40 floors above it. He thought about the 14 properties she had just turned down. He had been inside most of them at some point. He could recall their square footage and their acquisition cost and their current market valuation. He could not recall a single detail of what any of them felt like to stand in. He thought about the penthouse, the mock-up still face down on the windowsill. He thought about the thing he had never said out loud to anyone, which was that he had spent 15 years building a portfolio of things he owned completely and felt almost nothing about entirely. Everything he had was his. None of it meant anything in the way Ava meant when she talked about the white belonging to her. Those were not the same kind of ownership. He understood that now in a way that sat uncomfortably in his chest. "The penthouse," he said. "If I brought you back to finish it, same original terms, would you consider it?" Ava looked at him. He was still facing the window. There was something different in the way he was standing. The restlessness that usually moved through him like low current was quieter. "Same terms," she said. "Same fee." "Yes," he said. She picked up her notebook from the chair beside her. "I'll have my team on site Thursday," she said. She stood and walked to the door. Marcus did not turn from the window. He listened to her footsteps cross the floor, heard the door open and close, and then stood alone with the city spread out below him and the first honest feeling he had sat with in a very long time settling somewhere in his chest with the patience of something that had been waiting a while to arrive. The penthouse was done on a Friday. Ava's team cleared the last of their equipment by midday. She stayed behind after they left, the way she always did when a project finished. Not to check anything. The checking was done. She stayed because every completed space deserved a moment of stillness before the world moved into it and made it ordinary. She walked through it slowly. The reclaimed oak floors ran the full length of the living area, warm and uneven in the way old wood was uneven, each plank holding a slightly different tone depending on where the light reached it. In the morning that floor would look like one thing. In the evening it would look like another. It would never be the same room twice. The east wall was finished. Every section of it. The texture moved in one consistent direction from corner to corner, the way she had rebuilt it that night alone with the Wauch light and her notebook. Nobody would ever know it had been taken apart and redone. That was not the point. The view from the main bedroom sat exactly as she had planned it. Nothing on the wall behind the bed competed with the windows. The room did not face inward. It opened. It let the city exist alongside whoever was in the space rather than demanding they look away from it. She stood in the reading corner for a long moment. The single pendant above the chair threw a circle of warm light just wide enough for a person and a book. Nothing more. Everything about it was considered without announcing that it had been considered. Her father would have liked this room. She did not say it out loud. She thought it once, clearly, and let it sit. Then she picked up her bag and went home. Marcus's assistant sent the message that evening. He was asking if she would come by the penthouse Saturday morning. He wanted to see it with her there. She replied that she would be there at 10. He was waiting when she arrived. He opened the door himself, which she noted. No assistant. No phone in his hand. He was in a plain dark sweater and he looked like a man who had slept well for the first time in a while, which she did not comment on. He stepped back and let her in. She watched him see it. He moved through the space the way she had moved through it the day before, slowly and without speaking. He touched the edge of the oak floor with the side of his shoe the way people touched things they wanted to confirm were real. He stood at the east wall and looked at the texture. He walked to the bedroom and stood at the window for a long time. Ava stayed in the living area. She heard him move from room to room. The penthouse was quiet in the way spaces were quiet when everything in them was where it was supposed to be. No echo, no hollowness, just the particular sound of a room that had been thought about. He came back to the living area and stood near the center of it. He looked at the floor, the ceiling, the view. "It's not like anything I own," he said. "No," she said. "I've been in every one of my properties," he said. "I can tell you what each one cost, what they are worth now, what the projected value is in 10 years. He paused. "I couldn't tell you what any of them feel like to stand in." He looked at her. "This is the first place I've stood in that feels honest," he said. The words came out without the careful packaging he usually put around things. No qualifier, no follow-up that softened or redirected, just the sentence, plain and open in the middle of the room. Ava looked at him steadily. There was something different in his face, the quality of control he carried everywhere, the particular set of his jaw that said he had already considered every outcome and chose the one that cost him least, was not there. He looked like a man standing in a room he had not designed and could not manage and did not want to. "My father built spaces like this one," she said. "Not in size, in honesty." She looked at the floor. "He used to say a room tells you the truth about the person who made it, whether they cared, whether they rushed, whether they thought about the person who would live there or only about the person who was paying." "What does this room say?" Marcus asked. She looked around at once. "That somebody cared," she said. He nodded. He looked at the reading corner, at the circle of light the pendant threw across the chair. "I owe you an apology," he said. She waited. "The competing designer," he said. "That was about my pride, not the project." "I know," she said. "It cost us 3 weeks." "It did," she said. "I'm sorry," he said. He said it the way people said things they had rehearsed and then decided to say plainly anyway. She accepted it with a nod, which was what it deserved. The room held them both for a moment. Outside, the city was bright and wide and moving. From this height it looked almost calm, all its noise compressed into something that resembled patience. The light coming through the windows was the particular gold of a Saturday morning in early autumn, the kind of light that made ordinary things look like they had been chosen. Marcus looked at her. "Have dinner with me tonight," he said. She looked back at him. "Not a meeting," he said. "Not a contract. Not a conversation about the next project." He paused. "Just dinner. Just me asking." The room was very quiet. Ava thought about the first morning she had walked into his office with her portfolio and her notebook and found a man who used silence as a weapon and had never once been told no by anyone who meant it. She thought about the east wall, the woke light, her father's rule about the quality of what you chose when nobody was watching. She thought about the way Marcus had stood at the window in his office after she turned down the offer, how something in him had shifted in a way that had nothing to do with business. 7 o'clock, she said. Something moved across his face. Not the controlled half-smile she had seen in their early meetings. Something quieter and less practiced than that. "I'll send you the address," he said. "Send it to me directly," she said. "Not through your assistant." He looked at her for a moment. Then he took out his phone. She watched him find her number in his contacts, watched him type the address himself and send it. Her phone moved in her bag. He put his phone away. They stood together in the finished room as the morning light shifted across the oak floor, warm and unhurried, the city stretching endlessly beyond the glass. Neither of them looked away.